getting out of an abusive relationship early makes a huge difference.
And I'm proud to say I did come in as a victim, but I am a survivor.
Then I could see my mom. My mom was walking toward us. And I got excited. And I was like, there's my mom. And then he didn't stop.
I'm trying to keep it together, I said. I gave in to the tears. And I hated that.
It's not necessarily the easiest process. It's not necessarily the prettiest process, but it is the most effective process. Like, you can do this. I'm going to tell you 100% you can do this, and you're so worth it to do this.
I'm sure losing any child is a real arrow through your heart, but you know, she was great. She was a friend and a family member and our daughter.
There is one thing stronger in me than fear, and that's my determination.
And now, here's your host, Jen Lee.
Before we begin today's episode where we address the fentanyl crisis, I want to invite everyone to the 2022 Central Florida Fentanyl Summit. Sunday, August 21st from 1 to 3 p.m. at the Cocoa Beach Country Club located at 5000 Tom Warner Boulevard, Cocoa Beach, Florida. You will hear from subject matter experts, and there is time allocated for questions and answers. For additional information, visit www.blueplaid.org. We hope to see you there. Welcome back. This is Jen Lee, the creator and host of I Need Blue podcast, Survivors Talk Surviving. To hear additional stories, visit www.ineedblue.net. Please note, I Need Blue does contain stories which feature graphic content and could be triggering. Please seek help if needed. Remember, you always come first. Today, my guest is Suzy Pereira of the Blue Plaid Society. Suzy lost her son in November of 2021, not even a year ago, to fentanyl poisoning. Fentanyl is the deadly synthetic opioid that has contaminated the illicit drug supply and is killing thousands of Americans. In fact, it is the number one cause of death of Americans ages 18 through 45, more than car accidents, suicide, and gun violence combined. In the wake of her tragedy, Suzy started a nonprofit, the Blue Plaid Society, named after her son's iconic style of wearing blue plaid shirts. The Blue Plaid Society exists to warn and educate the public about this deadly drug. Suzy, welcome, and thank you for being my guest.
Yes, hi. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely, it's my pleasure. You know, I wanted to start off today's conversation reading to you a headline that I saw on the news. It was this: Washington man arrested after 91,000 fentanyl pills discovered hidden inside a chip container. And when I say chips, I mean like potato chips. This individual was linked to a transnational criminal organization. Suzy, let me ask you, how did you first learn about fentanyl?
Yeah, I first learned about fentanyl 30 minutes after I found my son dead in his room. I came into his room that morning to wake him up for work, as I always did, and I found him passed out on the floor, kind of in like even a downward dog yoga position. I thought that was so strange. I thought, you know, he must have fell out of his chair that way, but I turned him over and I realized immediately he wasn't breathing and he was purple on his face and his hands. And so I ran across the house and grabbed my phone. On the way back, I flicked on all the lights, flew the front doors open, called 911, began CPR right away, tried to revive him, but what I didn't know was, you know, he had already been passed for a couple hours at that point. When the emergency team arrived and, you know, pronounced him dead, there was officers at my house and an investigator had arrived at my house pretty quickly. And she explained to me that, your son probably had a bad batch. And I said, a bad batch of what? What do you mean? She explained fentanyl and how deadly it was, and that probably the drugs that he had used or ingested contained fentanyl. It suppresses the breathing, which causes the person to die very, very quickly. And so that is the first time that I learned about it. I was shocked.
Did you ever find out perhaps what pill he had been taking or thought that he was taking?
Oh, yes. There was a lot of evidence as to how it all unfolded. In the summer of 2021, my son was really struggling. He had gone through a bad breakup with a young lady. He had been assaulted by two men that beat him, and he took about 20 blows to the head. As a result of dating this young lady, there was some bad stuff that went down, and he was jumped, and he received a brain injury from that beating. So he was really struggling with that. And then he had slurred speech, loss of balance, outbursts, everything associated with a traumatic brain injury. And then he turned 26 and he fell off of his dad's health insurance. And, I thought I could get him a policy. I just call up and get a policy, and it doesn't work that way. You negotiate a policy and then they turn it on like a month later. So, my kid was walking around with a brain injury and no access to medical care or the neurologist that he needed to see. And then he lost his grandmother, and he was really in a spiral. And so he was using Xanax that he was getting from a friend, and he got arrested for having 2 Xanax in his pocket that were not prescribed to him. And he was just in a free fall. He went to recovery. Because he recognized he was in this free fall, and he was using alcohol and recreationally using drugs to combat all the symptoms that he was having and the depression and the anxiety he was having. When he got out of recovery, he was good for about a week. Then he slowly started returning back to the people that he had been hanging out with. All were recreational users. For some reason, that those drugs he was using wasn't doing it for him, and he went to try heroin. He had tried heroin when he was 20 for a few weeks, but I caught him at it, and we intervened pretty quickly, and he, on his own, decided to stop using that, and that was a bad idea. But for some reason, after his time in recovery here, he went back and tried to use heroin again, and what he was being sold, or what he was sold, was not heroin. It was a mix of cocaine, meth, and fentanyl. And when he injected it, I think it was about the second or third time, from what I could tell from the text messages and the instant messages he had with people. It was either the second or third time he did it, but it was lethal. It contained enough fentanyl in it to kill 12 people. And so he succumbed to it very quickly.
Wow. So as a mom myself, I guess I'll just ask this question. Did you feel helpless?
Well, I did feel helpless when I was trying to help him through that summer. So many things had happened. Even more than I told you. With respect to the time we have today, I just tried to summarize it. But I did feel helpless at that time. When he went to recovery, I felt relieved. I thought, okay, at least the spiral will stop, and he'll get out, and he'll have a reset, and he'll be able to start over. What I didn't know, though, is that, I knew when he got out of recovery that he would probably relapse and go back to, alcohol and recreational using, and that this would be a pattern through his life. I knew that, this was going to be a pattern of, getting better and relapsing, getting better and relapsing.
How long was he in recovery?
Only 28 days.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Only 28 days. He could have stayed longer, but he was bored and he was ready to come home. And I fought it. I cried. I was like, no, don't, just stay there, please. He's like, Mom, I've learned everything I'm going to learn here. I gotta get out and try it on my own. So I went and picked him up. But, With fentanyl, that's the paradigm that I want to just kind of let everybody know. You don't have time to keep bringing your child or your loved one back to rehab. And there's only a 2% chance it's going to work. So you kind of know it's going to be this lifelong struggle. And sometimes they're going to do great, and sometimes they're going to fall off the wagon. But with fentanyl, you don't get to do that. Like I said, my son didn't have time to become a drug addict. He didn't have time to become a heroin addict. After the second or third shot, he was dead. He didn't have time to, go back to recovery and try it all again. It cuts your life short, just like that.
Absolutely. Oh, so how would you describe fentanyl?
Well, after my son died, I've done a lot of research on it. So illicit fentanyl is a highly powerful opioid, synthetic opioid. How it's made is China sells the precursors of this drug to Mexico, and the Mexican cartels and criminal organizations mix these precursors together in jungles and dirty labs and cattle ranches, and they put it into other drugs like heroin, cocaine, meth, or they press it into pills made to look like prescription medication. All of this is coming free-flowing over the border. The border agents, they try to catch everything they can, but really they're only catching about 10%. And that is why you see busts like you were talking about, where people have thousands of pills, millions of pills.
They're small. It's a very tiny pill.
Absolutely. It only takes 2 milligrams to kill you, and 2 milligrams of fentanyl is equivalent to about 4 or 5 grains of salt, and that is lethal.
That is crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is.
So, Suzy, drug dealers exist because they have clients, right? But if they kill their clients, there's no one to buy the drugs. So why would drug dealers want to kill them?
So I get this question a lot because it's obvious, right? Like, why would you want to kill off your clientele? You're going to not have people to buy your stuff. Here's the thing. First of all, there's no such thing as an ethical drug dealer. The illicit drug market has expanded in recent years due to the prescription opioid epidemic from the late 90s and 2000s. Doctors overprescribed opioids to millions of people, treating it for chronic pain, and they were compensated for doing so. So by doing that, we went from 3 to 4 million drug users in the country to 10 to 12 million. And then we shut off the prescriptions. We realized that was a bad move. So we shut off the prescriptions, and now you have 10 to 12 million people now addicted to opioids that have nowhere to turn except for to the street. So now instead of selling to 3 to 4 million people, drug dealers are selling to 10 to 12 million people. The margin for loss, they don't care. If they're selling to millions, they don't care if they kill 100,000 a year. And they use fentanyl because it's extremely cheap to make. It's extremely easy to conceal and transport. They don't have to rely on the agricultural base to grow poppy and coca for heroin or cocaine. They could just make this stuff easy in a dirty little lab and put thousands and millions of pills, packed and hidden in containers. And one small brick of fentanyl is equal to 100 bricks of heroin. It's a perfect business model for them. And they do not care that they are killing 100,000 Americans a year. They don't care.
What has surprised me is sometimes I hear stories and like the child has gotten it off some online forum where they're targeting people, children specifically.
That is exactly right. Drug dealers will target youth, teenagers, young adults. They do so by using certain emojis. They know that these platforms, you can reach out to children and then the communication vanishes. And it is really as simple as ordering a pizza. Children and young adults do this because they're very savvy with social media, and it's just easy for them to do.
One thing I noticed, Suzy, and it is something that you are passionate about, is you use the term poisoning when talking about these deaths. Can you explain to our audience the difference between poisoning and overdose?
Yes, thank you for asking me that question because this is something I'm really passionate about. In the traditional drug overdose, the person knows what drug they are getting. Whether it be a prescription drug or illicit drug, they understand the drug that they're getting and they're actually getting that drug. They actually know what a dosage is and they consume too much, whether knowingly or unknowingly, they consume too much and they succumb to it. That is not what's happening with illicit fentanyl. Illicit fentanyl is being deceptively hidden into other drugs, cocaine, meth, and heroin, and it's being pressed into pills made to look like prescription medication. This medication is not Percocet, Adderall, Xanax. It is a counterfeit pill that contains nothing but an expedient and fentanyl. By way of deception, that is why we call it a poisoning. And let me explain a little further. Let me give you a very simple example I like to tell people. You like to drink coffee or you like an energy drink. So your drug of choice is caffeine. So you come over to my house and I give you a warm cup of coffee, you drink the coffee, it's very satisfying, you get your caffeine, and no harm comes to you. Say your drug of choice is caffeine and you come over to my house and I give you a warm cup of brown water and I put fentanyl in it. I tell you, here's your caffeine. You drink it and you die instantly. Well, you've been poisoned. I poisoned you. That's exactly what is happening. These people are hiding this harmful substance in other substances or in pills made to look like something else. And they're giving it to our children. They're giving it to our loved ones. And our children and loved ones are dying instantly from it. That is why it's a poisoning. There's no safe dosage of illicit fentanyl. 2 milligrams will kill you, as we said earlier. Just a few grains of salt, that'll kill you. That is a poisoning and it is an act of murder. And that's why we call fentanyl the murder drug.
That is a great explanation, and I never thought of it that way. So thank you so much for sharing that. I get it now. It's scary. It certainly doesn't make it any easier.
And just to expand on that a little bit, sometimes I have parents or loved ones come up to me and say, but my kid knew he was taking fentanyl or she knew there was fentanyl in it. Well, just because they knew doesn't mean they weren't poisoned. If I hand you that cup of brown warm water and I say, hey, there's fentanyl in it, and you take it anyway, that doesn't mean you weren't poisoned. You were still poisoned. You're still poisoned by way of what the harmful substance was. That's how I explain that.
I wonder how, and maybe you've had this conversation with other parents, but we understand how lethal it is. So why would a child then decide to take fentanyl? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Typically with the children, especially ages 12 through 17, they do not understand that they're taking fentanyl. They really don't. These are first-time experimenters or they're recreational users just experimenting with drugs or different kinds of drugs. They really don't know about fentanyl. That is where the advocacy comes in. What we try to do at the Blue Plaid Society is inform parents that this is happening, that this is really happening, and the threat is real. When I'm on my campaign and trying to do that, a lot of times I'll run into people, parents, and they'll say, oh, no, I've taught my kid about drugs. My kid's a good kid. My kid would never do this. And that's wonderful. I'm so glad that they have done that. However, sometimes kids do dumb things, even when you tell them. That's just the nature of being human. Sometimes we take those risks, even though we know we're not supposed to. We do it anyway. Or perhaps they had been drinking and they don't realize their inhibitions are down and they think, oh, my friends are taking these pills, so I'll take one too. That can happen. And That's what we want to try to get out to people is even if you think you've done everything right, please just listen to the message. Please consider it and please talk to your kids about it just to give them one more layer of protection against this crisis.
How important is it that our children get this information?
I'm very passionate about wanting to get into the schools. But, as a parent, I'd want to hear the message first myself and judge for myself when I should talk to my kids about this. So I'm very respectful of that. But overall, what I would like to see is parents on board, parents knowledgeable and on board with this, and parents agreeing to allowing nonprofits such as the Blue Plaid Society to come in and talk to children with a regulated program to do so because, we're not here to scare children. We're not trying to scare people. We're just trying to arm them with the truth. And the sooner you can start talking to them about it, better off they're going to be, the more knowledgeable they're going to be. We have a thing when we were younger, probably you were part of the Just Say No campaign, or you probably heard of the Just Say No campaign. And, that got a lot of criticism because maybe it didn't work. I don't understand why people say it didn't work. It did work for me. I don't know.
I did. I remember the coloring book. We had a little book, and
yeah, I know when I was in school and I was kind of met in that moment with that peer situation where, someone was handing me a marijuana cigarette. I was like, no, thank you. I just said no, and it worked for me, and it was cool. But what we try to say now is just say no, KNOW, which is just have the knowledge going forward that, you're not just going to try this drug and wake up in the morning and say, man, that was really dumb. I wish I hadn't done that. If you try a drug these days, any drug, including marijuana, because fentanyl is being found in marijuana now, you have a 50% chance of dying. And it's not about just waking up and going, oh man, I wish I hadn't done that. It's about not waking up at all. And that is what we really want to try to impress upon people. But yeah, we would love to get into the schools and deliver that message.
I know you kind of talked a little bit about pushback, but what pushback do you foresee as to why they might not want this message in the schools?
In my advocacy groups, us nonprofits, we do talk amongst ourselves and we do share resources and things like that. Some of my other peers, they have gotten pushback because, this is a very heightened, scary message that we are putting out there. You take a drug and you die instantly. That's scary. You have to be very careful how you deliver that message to students and young people. You want to tell them the truth. You want to give them the knowledge to protect themselves, but you don't want to send them home freaked out. And I think if we do that, parents get very concerned. Parents call the school, hey, you're freaking out my kid. Hey, what are you telling me? He or she could die instantly. Is there a drug problem in the school? The message might get diluted. So I think it's very important to get to parents first, show them the curriculum or the learning plan and have them sign up to it and then go forward.
Yeah, and I think you'd absolutely agree that, you want their collaboration. You want them included. You want them, there if they want to deliver a message as well. This is very much a community issue, and it's going to take a community coming together to bring that awareness. And our interview is not over, but right now at this point, if somebody is listening and is like, okay, I want to help, I want to contribute, I know someone, I can connect you, how do they reach out to you?
Yes, you can reach out to me at blueplaid.org. You can go to our website. There's a contact us page. You could reach me, Suzy, Suzy, at blueplaid.org. You can send me an email message, or you could call me 321-344-0075.
Can you tell everybody what Blue Plaid is and where that name came from?
Yes, thank you for asking me that. The Blue Plaid Society is a nonprofit organization that I founded. We were created to provide fentanyl awareness and education to the public. The reason we call it the Blue Plaid Society is because my son always wore blue plaid shirts. He has tens of blue plaid shirts, and they're all still hanging in his closet. I still wear them. I wear them every once in a while when I want to be a little closer to him. But, our logo is a skull and crossbones because we fully believe in the poisoning message. And that skull and crossbones is a blue plaid. That's a nod to Tristan for his iconic style of wearing blue plaid shirts.
Yeah. I know that we want to talk about your mission in the fentanyl poisoning and give honor and remembrance to your son, but I don't want to forget about you. I don't want to forget about you as the mom, as the parent, and your family. So can you take me back to the moment that you found your son? What was going through your head? Because there are so many parents, and I'm sure throughout your advocacy group, you've met other parents who have experienced that same exact moment. Are you okay with sharing that with us?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, sure. Yeah, I can take you back to the moment. I was telling you a little bit when I turned my son over and realized there was an emergency happening. I spent 12 minutes giving him CPR, trying not to give up. There was a time when he was younger, when he was 16, and he was laid out on the front lawn, and paramedics were giving him CPR for a different reason, and they brought him back. So I had that in my mind, that I could save him. And then once the emergency teams arrived and they pulled me off of him, and I just sat in the kitchen, it just was hopeful. They were only there for 3 minutes. They were only in the room for 3 minutes when they called it, and they came out and told me. And, I will never forget it, that officer coming out into the kitchen and very, emphatically, softly as he could, he said, I'm sorry, man, but your son has passed. Those were his exact words. And I tell you, when you hear that in that moment, it's so final. It's shocking, but you feel like you've just hit a brick wall. And the anguish that you go into with thinking, how am I going to accept this? How am I going to live without him? Tristan was my only child, and he was my best friend. And it was he and I living in this house together. We live in a house that he chose. He loved this house, and he chose it, and that's why I bought it. And it's the most challenging thing in the world is to keep on going and keep on living with something that you cannot change. And the loss of your child is probably one of the most painful things you can ever go through.
Mm-hmm. Because it doesn't make sense. It doesn't follow the laws of life. So you were alone then when you found your son.
Yeah, absolutely. It was me. And, right after when I had learned that he was gone, I took a few minutes and I told the officer, I said, I feel like I've got to fall to my knees. And she was like, that's okay. Go ahead. Do it if you have to. And I did. I just fell to my knees, and the wind just was knocked out of me for several minutes. And I don't even know how or kind of remember the call that much, but I called my dad. He's my stepdad, but he's my dad. And I told him, and he was same thing. Then wind knocked out of him, but he came over. Then I called one of my best friends, and she came over. Yeah, the hardest thing for me for the months following was really just dealing with that brick wall that I could not change this, and I could not bring him back. And I had to figure out a way to keep living. How am I going to go on? He was everything to me. He was my only child. He was my best friend. He was my heir. Who was I going to leave? Everything that I had worked for my whole life. It was my intention to bestow that upon him. And now I didn't even have that. So what was the purpose for going on? And the purpose was the Blue Plaid Society. I found a way to channel my pain into something else and to try to help other people from not going through this same experience.
And how much time had gone by before you realized, wait, this is my mission?
It was 3 months. I honestly have a story about the day that I made up my mind to do it. For 3 months, I was in a really, really dark place. There were a couple of nights where I just lost my mind, so to say. A couple of nights I was just in so much pain. I would go in his room and I would lay down in the exact spot that I found him, dead. And I would just cry and sob and just wish him to come back. Please come back. Please don't leave me. I was having a lot of suicidal ideations. And there was one time, I was taking a shower and I was like, you know what, this is it. I'm going to do it. I can't live this way. This is just too painful. I was taking a shower and my blind was up in the shower and the sun was streaming in and I was getting out of the shower. I said, that's it. I'm going to go buy a gun and I'm going to do it. I don't care. I'm not afraid to do it anymore. I was drying off and then it started to rain and I noticed that the sun was out and I was like, oh, we're having a sun shower. So I went to the window and I looked out and I was finished drying off and there wasn't any clouds in the sky. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. This is, true sun shower. So I just was curious. So I went outside the front door and there were no clouds, but there was still a gentle rain coming down. I was like, wow, this is crazy. Where's this precipitation coming from? So I decided to walk all the way around the house just so I could kind of see. There must be clouds miles off, and the wind's just bringing it this way. But that wasn't the truth. I walked all the way around. There were no clouds in the sky. And I literally was finally standing in my front lawn looking down and it was raining on me. And Tristan knew that I loved the rain. I always loved the rain, still do. And he was like, no, Mom, I see you. And he's like, look up. Look up. You see, even through the rain, there is still light. I know there's probably some scientific explanation for why I was where the precipitation was coming from, I'm sure, but I choose to see that as a sign in the very moment that I was contemplating doing something very terrible. And it was in that moment that I said, all right, I see it and I'll do what you want me to do. And I just said, you know what? The only thing I can do is tell my story and hope that other people take warning and maybe do something different to save their child or their loved one. And I got on it. And ever since then, I have never had a suicidal ideation ever since that day. My work keeps me really busy, really engaged. And I just hope that I could just even save just one person. That would be enough.
I think that's awesome. And we definitely want to talk about some of the wonderful things that you have going on. But I do want to ask you, Narcan. We've heard a lot about that. What can you share in regards to that?
Yeah. So Narcan is the antidote. It's a very simple nasal spray. It has 4 milligrams of ingredient in the nasal spray. And if you come upon someone who is in a situation where they may be succumbing to fentanyl or an opioid or any opioid, you can spray that up their nose, turn them on their side, keep trying to wake them up, keep trying to bring them around. And then if 1 minute later, if they're not come around, you spray another spray. Sometimes it might take 3 or 4 mists to get that person to come around. Yeah, that's what it is. It blocks the receptors that are uptaking the opioid. So it reverses the effects of the opioid.
And do you think that would have helped your son with his situation? Yes.
Well, so interesting enough, I did have Narcan in the house, but I didn't know that it was for an opioid reversal. I had been prescribed a sleeping medication in the past because I was dealing with my own anxiety, and I kept those pills in the safe. A lot of prescribers will co-prescribe Narcan with other types of medications that, you could possibly overdose on or, not use properly. And so it was for that reason. And my son had taken it and he had it in his backpack, and there was an open container of Narcan in his closet. But I know for a fact that he did not use it that night, that he died. My son died with still a needle in his arm. He really succumbed to it, fentanyl poisoning, instantly. He didn't have a chance to use Narcan that night.
So who should have Narcan in their possession?
In my opinion, it's every single person. But I mean, truly, obviously, if you have children or teenagers, you definitely want it. if you have people that are active in substance use disorder, I would definitely have it around, really anyone. I wouldn't be afraid of it. It's really just a nasal spray. It can't hurt you. If you spray it up your nose, nothing's going to happen to you if you're just not having a problem. So it's really harmless, but it's very effective for reversing an opioid.
Mm-hmm. And where can somebody get that?
Interesting enough, Brevard County just received a grant for a Narcan or naloxone distribution in the county. So you can call Brevard County Fire Rescue, and they have a program for distributing it. I'm not exactly sure of their distribution program, but I do know that they have it, and you could pass it out for free. Blue Plaid has applied to be a naloxone distributor. We're waiting on our certification to do that, but once we have that, that'll be part of our advocacy and our outreach, and we'll always have it at our programs.
Did you reach out to support groups for yourself afterwards for support?
I did at first. I did find, one group that, was dealing with the loss of a child. They were very good people, but it was kind of the loss of a child through any means, and a lot of it was, infant deaths and things like that, which is terrible and very sad. But I really wasn't able to share my story. And then I finally just kind of happened upon certain Facebook groups that deal specifically with fentanyl poisoning, overdose situations, parents that have lost children through death drugs. And that's where I found my people, because, you kind of similar stories, you've gone through similar experiences. Many of these parents found their children the same way I did. And so through that shared experience, I was really able to heal. I tell you, I also sought my own help. I have a PTSD therapist that I see. She's amazing. I'm not afraid to say it. I think through transparency, that's how you help people. And I still am getting treatment for that. That really helps me to stay on track.
Are you comfortable sharing some of the PTSD symptoms?
So at first it was really just the anguish. I couldn't shake the anguish, and that's very normal. And a lot of parents that I talked to, even several years after, their loved one has passed, they still are dealing with the anguish. And that's a hard thing. It's very hard to even talk about your child or mention your child without tearing up or, succumbing to crying. And so a lot of people are still in that, and it's certainly very understandable. I thought I was getting pretty good at that, but the other day someone mentioned to me, are you still going to take that trip that you had planned? And then I choked up and cried because that was a trip that I had planned with my son. We were going to go to Denmark because he was Danish, so we were going to go to Denmark and see where he was, in his home country, and Norway and Sweden, and we were supposed to see a Queen concert. So but COVID struck and we never got to, but I always thought we would get back to it. But somebody asked me that, and I got choked up and I cried. I was like, wow, it's still there. So the other thing that I have with PTSD is it's very hard to be around normal people that kind of haven't been affected by this or haven't really lost a child or haven't gone through that specific type of trauma. I tried to go back to work, and everybody is around the water cooler talking about the basketball game or that, and you're just in a different plane. I certainly don't want anyone to have to go through this, but you do see the world through a completely different lens, and kind of those little things, those little chit-chatty things, you can't take part in that because if someone doesn't understand you or where you're coming from, it's very hard to kind of just take part in those kind of benign conversations that do lend themselves to having good relationships at work. So for now, I'm just continuing to work from home. I'm very fortunate that my company is understanding and allows me to do that for now. It's very triggering to just try to, feel normal when you really don't, and trying to get through your work day and walk around work and try to feel normal. It's very hard to do that.
You have a new normal now.
Yeah, absolutely.
And do you have the support you feel you need? I mean, I love that you're going to therapy for your PTSD. Or is there one area where you wish you had some place to go to heal whatever it is you're feeling inside?
I'm real fortunate that I am able to get the therapy, but I do have some really, really good friends that help me through this. And, I have one particular friend that he's my co-chairman at the Blue Plaid Society, and he's also a very, very dear friend. And he shoulders a lot. He's a great sounding board. And on days where I'm frustrated, I just kind of vent to him, and he's very, very calm, cool, and collected, and just is like, yep, and he lets me get it out. And I tell you, the other resource for my mental health is Tristan's friends. Those kids, ranging in age from 24 to 27, those kids that he grew up with, and the 3 girlfriends that he had, who I consider my daughters, really, they always call, they always check on me. Sometimes I can just call them up, middle of the day or end of the day, and be like, hey, what's up? I just need to talk to someone. And they're really great. They come to me with their problems sometimes, and it's wonderful that I can still be a guide and kind of have that parental connection with some of the young people that were of Tristan's age. So that really helps.
That's great. And, I never would have thought of that. And I suppose the reason why is because we know everybody deals with their own grief in their own way. And sometimes we're afraid to reach out to others who also are close to the situation, because we're a little apprehensive at maybe where they're at in their healing process and whatnot. Did you feel any of that hesitancy when you went to speak with his friends, or did you all instantly connect and be like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. I really needed this. I really needed you right now?
No, there was no hesitancy in his friend group. They were here the night of. By 10 o'clock in the morning, they all knew what had happened, and they were all here when they were all off work in my house that night. Christmas, my son died on November 4th. Christmas was going to be hard because I had had such an amazing Christmas with Tristan and his girlfriend at that time the year before. It was the best Christmas ever. So I was just going to kind of cancel Christmas for myself, but the kids were like, nope. And they came over and they brought their kids, and the tree was up and the snacks were out. And it was overwhelming, actually. I passed out on the couch, like overwhelmed with emotion, actually. They let me sleep for about 45 minutes, and then they woke me up and said, okay, time to wake up.
Yeah, it's amazing how as humans we have the ability to really make other people happy, feel supported and loved in their greatest time of need.
Absolutely.
And I love that you had that available to you and still do.
Absolutely.
What is the message that you want to get out?
It's really simple. I just want people to know that fentanyl exists. It changes everything. We're not dealing with the same drug paradigm of 10 years ago, even 10 years ago. This is a new game, and it's very, very dangerous, and no one is immune to it. This affects all walks of life. It doesn't discriminate whatsoever. All kinds of kids and young adults and older people are succumbing to this too. But my message is really just know that it exists, and please know it's extremely dangerous. And please don't do any drugs at all. Please don't take anything that's not specifically prescribed to you.
I think that's where we're at with it, what you just said about not taking pills at all, because you no longer know. It's so scary. Part of the mission of my podcast is to share resources. I know you live in Brevard County, Florida. If you have any particular resources here or groups that you would like to mention, now is definitely the time. And also, you have an event coming up. I definitely want you to share all of the details on that, because we would love to see all of our community. We would love to see all of our surrounding communities come and soak up all of the great information that you are going to provide?
Absolutely. So one resource I'd like to call out is the Brevard Prevention Coalition. They are about drug-free living. They're about addiction and recovery. I'm pointing to the coalition because there are a lot of people and a lot of organizations in the community of Brevard County that feed into this coalition. So if you want more knowledge or where you might be able to go, I would strongly reach out to them because they can help point you in the right direction depending on what your need is. I would also like to talk about our event coming up August 21st. So August 21st is National Fentanyl Prevention and Awareness Day. It is the day that bereaved families have come together to recognize this crisis and to call attention to the over 100,000 people that we lost last year alone to this. In recognition of that day, the Blue Plaid Society is hosting the 2022 Central Florida Fentanyl Summit. It's going to be kind of like a town hall. We have expert panelists that are coming to speak on the fentanyl crisis. We have representatives from the Drug Enforcement Administration, Brevard County Sheriff's Office, the Medical Examiner's Office, State Attorney's Office, Brevard Prevention Coalition, the Blue Plaid Society, of course. So we will all be there to speak, and then we will have a question and answer session. So we're really excited about this. Seats are filling up really fast. We're excited that that's happening.
How many seats are available at this point? Like, how many people do you have coming thus far? I mean, because we're still, 3 weeks out?
We do have room for up to 500. It's August 21st. It's Sunday from 1 to 3 p.m. It's at the Cocoa Beach Country Club in Cocoa Beach. This event is free. It's open to anyone. So we encourage people to come and listen to our panelists. You can go on Eventbrite and find us there. There will be a question and answer session following that. So you'll be able to ask questions to our experts. And we'll have a lot of resources there available that you can pick up and take with you, a lot of print resources that you can pick up and take with you and take home and come fully informed about this.
That is great. You went through something so sad and tragic, and you are using that to help so many other people. And so soon after, where do you get your strength?
Yeah, I go back to the signs that I get from Tristan. He's really strong with the force, I like to say. That was the first really major life-saving sign that I had gotten from him. But I get little signs from him all the time. Yesterday, I was just in my plant beds and I was kind of picking out the weeds, and it was really hot and humid, and this gentle breeze just kicked up. He was on my mind so much. He's never far from my mind at any time, but I was really thinking about him in that trip that we didn't get to take. He just blew that simple, gentle breeze right across, and it was almost like a little kiss on my cheek. I looked up at the sky and I said, "Thank you. I see you. I see you. Thank you for that." And then I just take those little signs as encouragement to keep going. So that's where I draw my strength from, is those little signs that I'm kind of open to or that I interpret as signs from him.
You're an amazing mom. Thank you. Your nonprofit, the Blue Plaid Society, how can people support that?
Oh, absolutely. So we do have a donate button on all of our platforms. You can make your tax-free donation, and we do send you a letter to say that, so you can have that for your taxes. We also sell T-shirts online. We sell T-shirts and pins and little wristbands. We try to provide those products so people can use it for their own advocacy at the same time to bring a little funding to us and what we do. And it does help because we do go out in the community. We have our big blue tent. We like to call it Big Blue. And we have all of our resources and things available. And that's how we connect in the community. And then when we put on these huge events like this, it takes a little bit of money to put on these types of events and to bring the community together and to have things that they can take home with them. So every single cent that we bring in goes to 100% to our advocacy. Our volunteers do not take any money. Everything we do pro bono. for Blue Plaid and for the community. Nobody takes a salary or anything like that.
And where would you like to see the Blue Plaid Society grow? Where do you see your nonprofit in 5 years, for example?
Well, the honest answer is I hope in 5 years we are no longer needed. I hope that in 5 years, the Blue Plaid Society, as well as the other nonprofits that are working so hard across the nation to help suppress the demand for these drugs and to make everybody in America aware that this is happening and that it is so deadly. I hopefully will get to the point where we suppress the demand that it's no longer needed. But if that doesn't happen, what I would like is definitely for us to grow in our own backyard. I'd like to become a household name. I'd like to be associated with fentanyl awareness. I'd love for everybody to have a Blue Plaid day and wear Blue Plaid to their work or their church or their school, because I'd like for Blue Plaid to become, the symbol for fentanyl poisoning awareness. But I would also like to grow with the state of Florida. I'd like to be able to go and speak and provide my story or to provide awareness and education to other communities in Florida. And then I'd like to continue my work nationally. Through our website, we're able to reach people all over the country, and I hear from people all over the country every day. And we even have some followers in Canada, which is really cool. So I just want to keep doing my advocacy where anybody will let me.
Absolutely. That's kind of how I feel as well. So thank you for allowing me and trusting me to share your story today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.
I want to allow time for any final thoughts, and please tell our audience again how they can reach you, where they can find you, and just the date, time, and place of your summit.
Yes, you can reach me at blueplaid.org. That is our website. You can reach me personally. You can email me at Suzy, S-U-Z-Y, at blueplaid.org. You can call us 321-344-0075. You can find us on Facebook, and we also have a closed group on Facebook. Just put in the Blue Plaid Society, and you should be able to find those two things readily. And we're also on Instagram, the Blue Plaid Society on Instagram. Our event coming up, it's August 21st. It's Sunday from 1 to 3 p.m. It's at the Cocoa Beach Country Club in Cocoa Beach. So again, it's a free event. Everyone's invited. You can come on out and learn about fentanyl poisoning and how you can protect your family and your students and your congregation from this deadly drug.
Thank you so much for being my guest, Suzy.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. This is Jen Lee, creator and host of I Need Blue podcast. To hear additional stories, visit www.ineedblue.net. And remember, you are stronger than you think.